Well, I'm joined now by the Conservative MP, Chris Philp, and Sam Tarry, National Political Officer at the Transport Union, the TSSA, one of the unions involved in today's dispute. And a very good evening to you, gentlemen. And Sam Tarry, let's start with those comments by the Labour Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, that these strikes are just totally unnecessary.
I think the interesting thing is that Sadiq agrees with us about the most important fundamental fact, and that is that the Tube is currently understaffed, massively understaffed. Now, we didn't want to be on strike today. I'll be honest, I'd hoped that we'd have got a deal. But the problem was what was put on the table was too little and too late. I think the important thing for your viewers to understand about this, it is a very reluctant strike in a situation where we are saying to people, we are now not meeting the actual regulations that were brought in after the King's Cross fire that could save people's lives. That's not,
we'll talk about the Mayor's London Travel Watch report in a moment or two, but just get the first response from Chris Philp on that. Do you then agree with this, that this is workers on a very important part of London's transport infrastructure, caring about passenger safety first and foremost?
No, I don't accept that. Since these new ways of working came in a year ago, there hasn't been a massive increase or even any increase in safety issues on London Underground. They are hiring a net 200 extra staff to work on the stations, which is welcome. And I do agree with the Labour Mayor, Sadiq Khan, who says these strikes are unnecessary. But it's very interesting. We just heard Mick Cash from the RMT on there. His president, Sean Hoyle, just a few weeks ago said that these strikes were about bringing down the government. The president of the RMT being open and upfront about the political motive behind these strikes. So I urge the RMT and other unions to think about the damage they're inflicting on the day-to-day lives of ordinary people. And we saw today at Clapham Junction Station, the biggest and busiest station in London, an evacuation on safety grounds. The unions claim they're striking over safety grounds, yet they have themselves caused the biggest safety incident so far.
Let Sam Tarry respond then. Right. There's a huge political element involved in this, and we have, as Mr Philp said there, heard comments from senior trade unionists that they want to bring down this government, that they want to see a Labour government.
Well, I think if that was the case, we'd be on strike every single day. That's patently nonsense. Striking on the Tube is not going to bring down the government. I mean, I think what's been interesting, actually, is there has been more positive dialogue from having a Labour Mayor in the fact that this person isn't resorting to ridiculous megaphone diplomacy. Remember, poor Sadiq, he's mopping up the mess that was left by Boris, the 800 jobs that were cut that caused this crisis.
That said that you don't need to strike, that it's completely unnecessary. And
Sadiq just needs to come forward and put more jobs on the table to sort it out.
Well, the report he commissioned by London Travel Watch, its conclusions were that passengers can benefit from these changes, subject to certain recommendations, particularly about staff visibility and about some of the ticketing machines working.
And it also recognised in that same report that we were understaffed. And actually, in that particular report, it was more of a discussion around the opening and reopening, and that discussion around ticket offices. But in terms of staff, it recognised that passengers were unhappy at the level of service they were getting, not able to use ticket machines to do all the functions that they would want, renewing Oyster cards in a proper way. And actually, at the end of the day, if you have a bomb threat, if you have a fire, a ticket machine is not going to evacuate you to safety. And that's the issue. There should be no compromise with safety. And you guys in the government, you know,
let's talk about the government.
Need to take that head on.
Well, you guys in the government, I mean, would you like to see the government legislate now, and not just because of this strike, but because of what's been going on Southern for so long and is going to start happening again tomorrow?
Yes, by the way, on that last point, there are 40% more British transport police on the Underground, and they're hiring 200 more staff in response to the report. To your question, Dermot, on legislation, yes, I would, and in fact, I'm tabling a 10-minute rule bill on the 24th of January.
Give us a sense of what you're asking.
The bill I'm introducing says there should be a legal requirement for strikes on critical public infrastructure, which includes the Tube, the trains and so on, to be reasonable and proportionate in the eyes of a High Court judge. So the High Court judge would balance the complaint the workers have versus the impact on the public. Now, take the strike on Southern Railway, the disputes over who presses the button to open and close the door, no job losses, no pay cuts, and according to the regulator, no safety issues. The impact of that is that 300,000 people, almost every day, can't get to work. In my view, that is disproportionate and unreasonable. I accept the right to strike. I completely accept the right to strike. But there is also the right of ordinary people to get to work, to see their loved ones. And in my area, and all the way down to Brighton, people are losing their jobs, they're having to move house, quit their jobs, not see their family. So I would like to see their rights protected.
But Sam Tarry, what do you think the union response would be to legislation like that? Would that fan the flames?
I think that is a dangerous and slippery slope. I think even someone as mad as Donald Trump is not proposing further anti-trade union legislation. I mean, I like to live in a healthy, vibrant democracy. Trade unions have given us the weekend, they've given us rights at work, they've given us paternity, maternity leave. You know, going even further than the recent anti-trade union laws that have been put through is a crazy idea.
Do you think there would be action in response to legislation like that?
You can't really go into an industrial dispute off the back of that kind of legislation, but I think that would lead to a further breakdown of industrial relations right across the country in all sorts of areas. That would be a crazy idea. Why not just get around the table and solve this issue? I'm sorry, your government has given money to GTR, the parent company of Southern, to bail them out at £20 million.
No, we haven't. No, and most is to Network Rail. That is factually untrue. Most of that went to Network Rail to fix the track. And Network Rail is publicly owned.
There for them to do the job properly.
Yeah, well, I agree.
Every single passenger wants a properly staffed tube. That's, you know, and Southern is also the same.
Which is, hang on Southern, no job losses. Well, look, on Southern, there are no job losses. In fact, they're hiring 100 more staff. All I'm saying is that strikes should be reasonable and proportionate. And no one can say that strikes should be unreasonable and disproportionate.
Gentlemen, I am so sorry we are out of time. Chris Philp, Sam Tarry, very good to see you.